And by 1957, it was. It was put on the updated $1 silver certificate to begin with. But in 1864, it was already on the 2-cent piece. Eisenhower believed it needed to be the United States motto. Did you know that it was our motto? I will say of the Lord, I love this song because it has to do with it. It reads, I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge, he is my fortress, my God, in him will I trust. Well, at that time in 1957, Charles Bennett, a representative from Florida, stood in Congress and he enthusiastically said, nothing can be more certain than our country was founded on a spiritual atmosphere and with a firm trust in God. Bennett went on to proclaim on the House floor that the sentiment of trust in God is universal and timeless. These particular 4 words, in God we trust, are indigenous to our country. Let this always be a reminder to us that the nation's political and economic fortunes are tied to its spiritual faith. And John F. Kennedy in 1963 said, this is America's guiding principle, has been, is now, and ever shall be, in God we trust. That is some affirmation on our money. To be quite truthful with you, when I was going through a terrible bout of lack and limitation, I actually never saw it on our money. That's when I really could have used it. Honestly, I didn't see it until I did. And I would forget. And then I would say, or even I would yell sometimes, I'd say, yes, in God I trust. I do not trust these lies of scarcity and lack. Now, I don't know about you folks, but abundance is something that I came here to learn in this life. And it took years to really learn that I could trust in God. Trusting in God is trusting with your whole heart and soul that supply is in you, it's all around you. You know, I couldn't get rid of it anymore. You cannot get rid of supply. It's like it's like you can't get rid of your nose. And it's the same thing. It's like you see supply is the God that is our very life. So it took many lessons for me to get past the doubts and the anxiety around money. Trust would be there one day and it would be completely gone the next. I do believe when I saw in God we trust on the money, I knew somehow that God had placed it there to say, come on, get your mind off the money and keep your trust in me. Now, if you can trust me, you're actually trusting abundance. I am abundance and I am completeness. For a while, I was led to handle money and all those words on the money with devotion and awe that those words were even there. I never in my life ever met a soul that acknowledged that in God we trust was on the money. Have you ever had a conversation about it over lunch? Isn't it wonderful we have in God we trust on our money? I've never heard it. It was like we were oblivious to the words that would lead us away from the fear and the anxiety and depression of not having money. The secret to a joyous, happy life are actually those 4 words, in God we trust. But folks don't really get together and talk about the miracle of those words on our money. I've never done it. You know, you go to someone's house for tea and they say, wow, in God we trust on our money. Is that ever wonderful? See, anxiety is always about not trusting God. Anxiety is caused from trusting the appearance, trusting the bad news on TV, or through phone calls. It's believing the numbers in the bank. believing the self-condemnation, believing the authorities we've accepted in our life that are actually not serving us anymore. We have been asked to trust God because God has a big view of our situation. Not only that, we are being asked to trust the love, the omnipotence, which is the power, and the omniscience, the knowledge, and the omnipresence. These words contain that which is abundant love and supply. God's very substance, his very being is our life. And accepting this provides us with an abundant life of his fullness have we all received, and grace for grace. Each piece of money says in God we trust, and some don't trust those words. They spend the little that they have, and then they examine the limitations and lack that they imagine that they have now that they've spent the money. What an astounding, loving thing that was orchestrated. And I know it was orchestrated by God. In God we trust on our money. Consciously know this in your heart when you spend your money. To trust God is to not feel lack or any limitation, but to have assurance that abundance is now overflowing into our life. You see, if we through ignorance are filling our consciousness with fear, panic, doubt, spiritual supply cannot enter in. Whatever your individual expression of God is, everything and anything must form to assist in its expression. So we are pervaded and filled with this God that we are to trust. Use money as a reminder that the God of your being can be totally trusted. Use money as a secret code that has been given to you. And your role is to understand that you have the secret code. And you are to consciously give your secret code silently to whoever you tip, whoever you pay, whoever you give your money to. You are the one with the code that you know what it means. And I'm not even getting into the all-seeing eye and the pyramid. I'm just talking about the 4 words that are on our money. You are loving your money with its powerful code and the people that you have an opportunity to give it to. When I would pay someone, I began to do it reverently and consciously, like I'm giving you this bill that has these words on it, these secret words that you may not even know the power of them. And here. Now, however, how can they change your life? How can those 4 words bring great treasures into your life? It is like in God we trust. We actually came here to live a life that is abundant. And the meaning of abundance in Webster's is overflowing, fullness, ample sufficiency, great plenty, profusion, and copious supply. When we trust, we open up the floodgates to the overflowing fullness of heaven. Abundance is not to be attained. It is to be realized. And that abundance has to do with our relationships and the total wellness of our body. The words in God we trust cover absolutely every area of our life. Did you know I'm pretty sure you know this, but there are 365 times in the Bible where we are told, fear not. And there is 186 times it tells us to trust God. Now, Charles Fillmore said something so beautiful. He said, God is the Almighty One, the Creator, the infinite, the eternal, underlying, unchangeable truth and absolute good expressed in all creation. When one knows God and worships him in spirit and truth, they recognize him as this great goodness. Omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent God is that from which all love springs. He is life, love, wisdom, power, strength, and substance. God is absolute wholeness and perfection. And man's recognition of his oneness with his perfect wholeness through Christ brings him into the consciousness of his indwelling life and health. And ladies and gentlemen, that is what we are trusting. When we trust in God, we trust. But you see, many see their circumstances ruling. They see the situations ruling. We see ignorance and confusion ruling, our bodies ruling. And we see at times ourselves as being entirely governed by the law of chance. We see ourselves vulnerable and fragile and forget that we are the light of the world. We are one with God. We are the temple of the Holy Spirit. How many times I had to come back to in God I trust, my mind would argue, you know, you only have so much. Your money's running out. You're not wise with money anyway. And then I would remember, no. It is in God I must trust, not myself, not my striving. My supply can never run out if God is my supply. How could it? God's never run out. When we read, I will never leave thee or forsake thee, that means our abundance will never leave us or forsake us. As God is abundance, that is what we trust. The truth is, we can never be separated from God. Well, a few years ago, after the revelation of In God We Trust, I completely forgot about trusting God. This was like 25 years ago. So my husband and I had a business. And I woke up one day and I said to my husband, I do not want to sell these things anymore. They were air purifiers. I do not want to talk about another dust mite. We must sell this business. So I said, let us go to our friend, Terry and Randy, and see if they want to buy our business. They were in our downline. It was multi-level, which I never thought I'd ever get into. So we forgot to discuss it with each other as to how much to ask. We're really not that sophisticated with money. You can see that. Anyway, we just should have talked about what we were going to ask for the business. So we told them we wanted to sell our business, and Randy said, oh, how much do you want for it? And I just blurted out $95,000. And he said to his wife, oh, just hand me my checkbook, please. And he wrote the check. We were both stunned. We couldn't even say anything. And for the next year and a half, I trusted the $95,000 instead of God. I was terrified it was going to run out. It was all we had. I somehow felt it was all that we would ever have. And how could we make it grow like other people did? And then the expenses we had came about. The air conditioner went out. The refrigerator broke. It was one thing after another. And with each thing, our money was being depleted. And I lived in fear. Well, I'm going to tell you something. When that money was gone, I woke up and I began to realize God was easier to trust than that money. It was a weight that was lifted off of me. God could be trusted. The money was not to be trusted. And money from that time has always been in my life. Those who don't trust in God often have health challenges. Not why? Because the body has a way of shutting down when we live our lives thinking that we are limited and there's so much to fear. The immune system, if this fearfulness is constantly recurring, the immune system becomes weakened and sluggish to respond in actual emergencies because of being overtaxed. And pheromones, which are hormones that are produced in the body as a result of our emotions. So if we're fearful, pheromones of fear just pulsate from our bodies and they go right out into our world. We don't want to do that. It's so much easier to trust God. Releasing our fears to God, He will perfect in us that which is perfectly needed. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Even the brain vessels constrict, resulting in decreased blood flow. So we're not thinking as well when we're fearful. So let us remember that in God we trust. And let's just be still a moment and close our eyes. And let's just hear God say, oh, peace be still. Why are you fearful? How is it that you have no faith? For I, the Lord thy God, will hold thy right hand, saying unto thee, fear not, for I will help you. My peace be unto you. Oh, fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. These things I have spoken to you, that in me you might have peace. Oh, yes, in the world you might have tribulation, but you be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And I will go before you, and I will make those crooked places straight. Thank you, thank you. In closing, I want to now open it up to you. If you could unmute, I would like to talk to you just a little bit about, have you ever had so much money and you put your faith in that instead of God like I did? Anybody want to talk about that? Or maybe none of you have done that. Are we unmuted? I think we're all muted.